But then I got an intern. I sent her to the garment center to go get the fabric, so that I could be in Union Square passing out postcards or whatever it is. And today it's obviously different, right? Where, another technology, I guess my brother was early on was text message. So during the pandemic, we were texting people. And that is now how a lot of commerce is done. And it's far more, that's not a word, it converts far more people than most other advertising. And so you're reaching people, right?
Yeah. Hey, Rebecca, thanks for coming to the studio.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I was just saying a couple minutes ago that we talk about success being no accident. And if there's anybody who knows that, it's you. Yeah?
Yeah, and I hate when people say lucky. You're so lucky.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, really? There was a lot of hard work involved.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk a lot about that. I think it's really important, especially with stories and people's, backgrounds and things like that. I know that pretty much everything about you is Googleable. So I'd love to get, what I would consider the cliff notes of your origin story.
Okay. We'll do you got the timer?
I'm ready.
Okay. I fell in love with sewing when I was about 8. I wanted this dress. My mom said, no, I'll teach you how to make it, which is the last thing, as I'm sure you hear from your kids. Your kids don't want to make things. They just want to be purchased.
Yes.
But once I began to see that I could have an idea and create it, it became very addicting. Went to a performing arts high school, too tall for the dancers, and found myself in the costume department designing 4 hours a day and working with all the shows there. So by the time I was 18 and most of my friends were heading off to college, I said, I want to go to work. And through my brother's friend that he met at a party, I got a phone number for a designer. This probably doesn't happen today. It'd be like, who is this person? We need to do a background check.
Yeah.
Back then it was innocent. And they offered me a paid internship in New York City. So I moved and worked there, got hired, worked there for about 3 years. And then I said, I know exactly what I'm doing and I'm ready to start my own business, which was
Totally ready
at 21.
Yeah.
Launched with a 5-piece collection that I thought was like the magnum opus of design. No one else really thought so. Mm-hmm. But I did come back from the Caribbean on a small vacation with a cut-up t-shirt, but it was I Love New York with beads and again, through my brother, who became my business partner later and CEO. He was having dinner with a famous actress who wanted one. So I sent it to her on September 9th, 2001. She wore it on Jay Leno a couple weeks after that. He said, who's your shirt by? She said my name. And again, pre-social media, it was just in the magazines over and over again. There was one nascent website with barely a terrible digital phone camera. And she was getting orders left and right. And I said, you need to pay me in advance. I have no money. And I'll go down to Canal Street and get the shirts and then cut them up and make them. And that was how
Oh my goodness.
It started.
And how long did it take to make one of those shirts?
About 15 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
So you could do it today. You could just do it today.
I could do it in my sleep because that's all I did for 9 months.
No way.
Yeah. I didn't make any money, but my name got out there.
Yeah, your name got out there.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I think that's a pretty iconic shirt that you made even more iconic.
Yeah, I think people wanted to have that shirt, but they didn't, it's boxy. It's kind of, I guess gender neutral is now a thing, but back then you wanted something that was unique.
Yeah.
So the fact that I cut it up and bedazzled it, made women want it.
And so you kind of, the Cliff Notes was great and it's amazing. And one of the things I think you might have glazed over is the fact that you sent it on September 9th, 2001.
Yep.
2 days later, September 11th happens.
Correct.
I Love New York shirt shows up at shortly thereafter and it just blows up.
Yes.
So what was it like to be not only be living in New York, right, at the time, but also be a part of that moment in that way?
So I had my first fashion show September 10th. It was a group show because we as designers, young people couldn't afford a show. Important people like my parents were in the audience. So it's about the whole audience. And I thought that the next day, it's all going to happen for me. And I went to I mean, you might laugh, but like Cotton Incorporated has color and cotton seminars.
Okay.
So I was for work, had to go the next morning, and we're in the middle of the seminar, and this woman with a very Southern accent comes in, and she's like, "Oh my God, the towers, they're falling."
No
and
way.
yes, I was like, "Who is this woman? What towers?
Why are towers falling? Oh, geez.
And then we turned on the news, and your life shifted. And my parents were on their way to the airport. So my first thought was, were they in the plane?
Oh, geez.
Cell phone towers were going down. There was lines of payphones. So I waited in line. My mom was like, "You need to get out of here. We got a rental car, like the last one. We're driving basically back home." I said, "No, I'm staying. This is my city." Wow. And right away, I went down to where I knew we could help and support. And so stood outside one of the hospitals. We were just trying to do anything we can. And then later on, with a group of volunteers, we were the only other ones kind of allowed. We were at the site, and my job was to make sure that all the rescue workers were hydrated and had a cot that they could sleep in, some snacks. So I was like the snack and drink lady. And so I did that for the first week, and then my boss at the time was like, "You need to come back to work." And I was like, "How can I come back to work?"
What do you mean?
Yeah, but it was crazy. I mean, you would go down to the site, and you couldn't see more than a foot in front of your face because of the dust. And it was just like the world had ended.
Yeah. And then, there's all these iconic sort of New York moments where, the Yankees game and all of the things that we all, have see and remember, especially that time of year. And then Jay Leno, The Tonight Show has, your shirt on display.
Yes.
And it was in clear support of all the first responders and everything that had just happened to band the city together.
Correct. So an actress, Jenna Elfman, who was on Dharma and Greg, now she's on Fear the Walking Dead. She wore it, and he said, "I love your shirt. Who is it?" She said my name on national television. And from there, I guess it was phone calls. It wasn't emails really yet. Yeah. Came in, and, Us Weekly ran it over and over. Lucky Magazine, InStyle, like it just kept running in magazines. And I just kept crediting this one little website, which is, again, e-commerce was very new.
Yeah.
And so that's how the name got out there. It allowed me to call boutiques later on and say, "Hey," I said my name. They're like, "I've heard of you. I don't know why. I guess you could come in and show me what else you got."
Mm-hmm. So that is, what you're doing for 9 months is making those shirts. So did demand trail off, or do you just go, "I'm out"?
Demand didn't trail off. I mean, obviously there was a spike.
Yeah.
And then it sort of petered, but I wanted to focus on my other designs.
Yeah.
I was making everything by hand. This was before bags. And so for about 4 years, I had a very quaint handmade clothing line. I paid the bills by also being a stylist for photo shoots and stuff. And so that's how I got by, but it was starting to get rough. Like, all right, is this really ever going to go somewhere? Because I can't live like this.
Yeah.
I was about to go take a bartending job or be a receptionist somewhere else. And I just said, what's going to make this pop? And then it was the bag.
So that's the first thing that really popped. You talked about the fashion show having, kind of the 5 pieces that you thought were awesome. Then you have this t-shirt that ends up being amazing. And then is the bag when you're like, this is going to be a business?
I didn't think that. So Same incredible, I call her my angel, came calling. She said, "I'm doing a movie, Jenna. The bag is a really important part of the character. And can you make bags?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally. Yes, I can."
Yes, it's official.
I just know how to make a bag to save my life. Wow. But I knew where to get them made because I was already making leather jackets and stuff. And so had this idea for a bag, sent it to her. It arrived 2 hours late to set. So they started shooting with someone else's bag, which was devastating. It was the last $1,600 I had. I was like, I wanted to throw up. I was just like, this was my one chance to be in a feature film, and now it's ruined. And I was like, I guess I'll just wear the bag around, right? What else can I do? And enough women stopped me that I thought, okay, there's something to this silhouette, this shape. And I showed it to a friend of mine in LA who was a buyer for a store. And I said, "What do you think?" She goes, "I love it. I'm going to put it in the store, but then I'm going to have Daily Candy." I don't know if you're familiar with Daily Candy.
No.
You shouldn't be. I'd be nervous if you were. I'd be questioning you.
I'm just saying. I tried to warn you earlier. So tell us what it is.
So Daily Candy, I know it's not, I'm really dating myself here, but Daily Candy was this one email a day of the newest, hottest, latest. And it was written in this really cheeky format. And that was when you wanted email. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll remember that.
Yeah.
So you looked forward to receiving this. So they wrote about it. And that's when things went crazy. That's when demand was like, oh my gosh, I've never experienced anything like this. The 12 bags sold out. They reordered 75. I called my dad. I was like, I don't have any money. Like, how am I going to make this order? And he's like, I'm not loaning you any. You already have a credit card bill that has my name on it that you don't know how you're going to pay. So maybe call your brother. And so we teamed up, and my brother was like, I'll loan you $5,000. Okay, pay it back. I'll loan you 10. And, eventually got to numbers where he mortgaged his house. We couldn't get a credit line. We couldn't get a loan, nothing. No one would give us money.
Even with orders.
Even with orders. It was like, you're too new of a business. You've been around for less than a year. So we started getting taken seriously at about the $500,000 mark. But before that, it was his house. It was maxing out his cards, and his wife would say, I just went grocery shopping. What is happening?
So you're bootstrapping, trying to figure out how you're going to make this thing happen. So there's a couple of themes that there's what some might call happy accidents, but something that is a theme that I've picked up on is you and your brother tend to meet people and build relationships with people that bring you introductions, and they look like accidents, but it's really all about the relationships.
It is incredibly purposeful. I used to, go out, and if I collected business cards, I'd go home at night like it was cash, like relationship, new opportunity. And I think that the only reason we're here is the relationships we built, and making sure that it was an even exchange, or I can't do what you did for me, but I can do something. So our first in the fashion industry, our first loan came from a factor. So they advance on purchase orders and they collect. And they also check the credit of the store to make sure it's safe to ship. So, they went deep with us in a way that, like, we shouldn't be lending you this much money, but we will. So what can I do for them? I can show up at their table and be the arm candy for the night at the fundraiser. I can speak for them. I can deliver a graduation speech. So it's really about this two-way, what can I do for you, that I think has really helped us.
Well, I think that says something about who you are and how you think about people and how you think about relationships, because that doesn't necessarily come natural to people. It's like, what's in it for me? And for you, you were saying, what can I do to be a part of and to contribute to? Where did that come from?
My first boss, the CEO of the designer I worked for, is half Japanese. And she was like, you always say thank you. You always send a thank you note or a gift when someone does something for you. And she really honed that in, like, be grateful, show your gratitude. And I think her repeating that to me over and over again really just came through in the way of, how can I show my gratitude? How can I show you that I'm not using you to get to the top, but that along the way, I'm trying to do what I can, even if it's perceivably, uneven. How can I make it so that you feel like I didn't just take something from you and run?
So that sounds like gratitude, which seems so simple, but you evolved it and made it your own. How to say thank you in your own way, and you use some of the creativity that you have to be able to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's powerful. And I think that that's an X factor that really helped you, right? What do you think is what do you think is maybe another X factor that was intentional and purposeful, that about your business or about your story that people might not pick up on?
The idea that you're going to persist in spite of, you can't even make this, up, just like, well, what else am I going to do? And I think to some degree, when you have nothing to fall back on, what do you have to lose? I already had done it from the bottom up. I knew what it was like to, have no money, cringe when I put my card down to pay, hoping it wouldn't be declined, or my brother, again, mortgaging his house. And we sacrificed all. So, like, what else is there to lose at that point?
Yeah.
I think
so you bet on yourself.
That was all I could do. Because what was I going to go? I was like, I can't think of a single thing that would make me want to get up in the morning. So, all right, I'll struggle through this a little bit more. And I was just mentoring a designer, and she was like, we're doing $40,000 a year in sales, which is not a lot.
Yeah. And
she's like, I think we want to sell the company. I was like, no one's going to buy it. you're going to have to live like this for a while. You want to know what I made? You know, I was married with roommates.
Oh my gosh.
Like trying to scam them for their electrical bill, you know, like it was like, you know, you have to suffer through this. It's not this like 0 to 100 million that people just read in magazine articles.
That's amazing. They're like, she's like, we had 40,000 in sales, and she's like, I'm going to get like 2x EBITDA, you know, and you're like, $16,000. That sounds great.
Jeff.
Okay. Well, I think, you know, one of the things that I think is really powerful is, you know, the moments that startups happen. And so tell us a little bit about, you know, the brand and how the business was born.
So the business was officially born once there was traction on the bags, and my brother said, let's formalize this. And so for a while he was my daily phone call, then he would fly up, and we really had to figure out, who do you staff up with first? I had an intern. Okay, good. You know, we really felt like we were outsiders within this industry. We had a showroom, so they were taking care of sales. So we really had to focus on design, PR, and graphic design. That was it at the time, production. And so it was a very tiny 5-person team that we could, you know, again, we were bootstrapping. So we could only afford someone when we had
orders.
We had the orders and the money to pay them. So it was very tiny. It was lean. We couldn't get an office lease. So I convinced my landlord to rent me another apartment in my building, and that was my office.
Wow.
And that was after working at my apartment with 5 people, and my boyfriend would wake up and want to watch TV on the couch, and I'd be like, no, it's 9 a.m. We
should be working.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we always made decisions, especially at that time, of where we could see white space and take advantage. So social media was just beginning. The only form of advertising or reaching your customer was through a store or a magazine. We didn't have $40,000 for an ad in Vogue.
Yep.
So the fact that we could talk to our customer online was like mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And when I did, stores and media were like, you shouldn't talk to your customer. You're making a huge mistake. You need to be better than her. You need to be perceived as like, I'm holier than thou. And my brother and I felt like, why? This is great. We get feedback. We do surveys. We're doing crowdsourcing. I mean,
for them.
It's for them.
Yeah.
And I was taking orders, especially during the 2008 recession, early crowdsourcing. They were like, can you bring back the purple from 2006? I'm like, yeah, send me your credit cards and I'll go uptown and make it. And that's how we did it.
Wow.
And so I think that for us, that constant connection to the customer and never getting to the place where you're like to them really made her loyal.
Well, what year is it that we're talking about right there?
That was 2007, 2008.
So from 2001 to 2007, 2008 was likely challenging times.
It never wasn't challenging.
Okay.
I'll say that.
Yeah.
Up until the bitter end. When we sold the company. It was,
oh man.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. Okay, so
but there are mistakes in that.
Yeah, talk to us about the mistakes. Like what are the first one was super clear. It was like, hey, let's watch TV during business hours. that was one that you were like, hey, no, that one's obvious. What are some of the not obvious mistakes?
Okay, so within my industry, at the time, you know, my brother kept saying, we're bootstrapping it. It's going to be really uncomfortable for just the next 5 years. Don't worry about it. And I was like, okay, but
you just you continue to sell.
Exactly. Sew those bags. Yeah. I think that there can be too lean of an organization that halts growth, but there's also people that are just like, oh, just give me the money and it'll be so easy. And that's not the answer either. So I think there is a right amount that's conservative. I think we were too lean for too long. Mm-hmm. When we did take in private equity money, they were of the mindset of, let's grow this to the next $1 billion Michael Kors, Tory Burch, Kate Spade, pump it and just sell. And then when we went to sell, the tone changed and they said, well, are you profitable? We're like, no one ever said we had to be profitable. We just thought we needed to grow.
Just grow top line. That's
exactly.
what we're supposed to do.
But we're not a tech company, you know? And we're a product company, and these products have...
The cost of goods is real.
Yeah, like even the gentleman who's now the CEO who purchased my company, he said, you guys thought you were like a tech company. Like, that's how you did this, which is cool. But like this margin that you need to make in order to have profit is higher than most, especially with bags.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I'm in awe you got this far. I have no idea how you did it, but like, that's not how apparel and handbag companies can actually do this. So
did you get a tech company multiple from this person?
No.
No? Okay.
Nice. But he's a great man. So I think that
I had to ask.
I have a great
You know what I
life.
mean? Okay.
So I think that was the first mistake, was this, all the investors are saying, grow, grow, grow. And then it's like, we should have focused on profitability. And I remember a very distinct conversation with my brother and our president at the time. I said, why can't we be a small company that grows stably, have nice lives, pay for what we want, and call it
Make it a lifestyle business.
And he was like, don't you want to be the next Michael Kors or whatever? And at the time, being so starved, right? Still being married with roommates, I was like, oh, it would be nice to like maybe sell for a couple $100 million. But I think in hindsight that it would have been the right thing to do to grow slower, more profitable, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a really difficult challenge when you're, because it sounds like you went from bootstrapping to private equity. That's a big jump.
It was 7 years.
But to private equity, you didn't go like angel and then like venture.
That's not how it was done.
Wow.
It was
amazing.
Yeah, it was private equity. There was no VC money at all. There was one guy who gave us the price tag we should have gone with. And he was the only VC, and the rest, that was private equity was doing all those deals.
Because private equity is all about the level of predictability that you have to have with private equity is hard as crap.
Yep.
You have to, the tension there is really high with private equity. So like, that's an advanced move, in my opinion, right? To go from bootstrap to that.
It was that, our factor, who again had overextended themselves by many millions at that time. And then private equity was who was buying up fashion companies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you get any maybe synergy or benefit from their network?
None.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I mean, that's one of the benefits of private equity is they've got other resources that can come and help. And
you know what it was, and I think the gentleman who was the managing partner of us, it was supposed to be this woman who was excited about fashion. And this guy came in and he wasn't excited about fashion. And so for him, it was just the reports. Send me the reports and the spreadsheets and the quarterly meetings where I would literally sit there on my phone under the table being like, what is EBITDA? What any of this means?
You're like, that's just the number that is going to help us sell.
Not important.
Not important.
But this color of leather is very important.
Oh my gosh, I freaking love that. So one of the things that I have been really interested in talking about as a marketer is the name of your company, Rebecca Minkoff.
Yep.
What is it like to have your name as the brand? What goes through your mind about like, it's your name. Yeah. So there's what you can and can't do, what you should and shouldn't do. Is there like brand management stuff, even post acquisition? I mean, what is the deal?
Oh, it is a complicated world.
I am ready to listen.
Okay. So in the beginning, when it's your name and your company, it's only what I think, right? And only how I want it to be. And then you go, well, we gotta, I live in New York. People in coastal cities tend to make more fashion forward choices. It can't only be what I want. What is the middle of the country like? And how do you take the essence of the brand and water it down a little bit because they're not exposed to the runway shows? And, like I'm temporarily living in Florida. I'm wearing stretch pants and sneakers every day.
Yeah.
My fashion sense is a little bit.
It's changed.
Yeah. So how do you take a bag and fit it for a different customer? And then you get purchased and it's like, well, we need to go from 0 to 100. So how do we make even more products with your name on it that makes sense? And you're not always going to say, this is my favorite item. I love absolutely everything. Because now you're making for yourself and your customer and someone else far, far away who just knows the name. They know nothing else. Wow. So it's sort of, a good friend of mine was like, as long as at the top and at the very bottom of diluting it, it still has a thread that goes back to downtown romantic, rock and roll, hardware. As long as you can get that, you're good. The minute you start saying, we should be like everybody else, which was definitely a theme that went on within my company, not by me, but buyers would come in We want the tote to say this. We want the wallet to say this. Can you give us this in these colors? For a long time, these stores were playing designer, and their retort, if you said no, would be like, okay, we'll just go get it from someone else. And then your head of sales would be like, do you want the business or not? And when we gave into that, that's when it was bad. That's when you looked at it and you're like, we just took all that stuff back because our customer was like, no, you're not known for this. So I think you always just have to make sure that the thread of dilution still resonates. It's still the same girl, maybe not, the one who's dressing out of Vogue, but you're not suddenly like, wait, that looks like it belongs to some other brand.
Wow. Are there things that, like you mentioned having to take something back? What's sort of the biggest L you took on the having to buy something back or take something back?
I won't name the store, but they wanted a computer bag that said Nerd Alert on it.
Okay.
It was a very large order.
And you complied?
I said no.
Okay.
And that's when my former president said, well, do you want the sales or not? Do you want to be the one responsible that no one gets their bonus? And I was like, no.
Oh my God.
We took most of them back.
So I think one of the things that has been interesting to just kind of read about is you have been constantly thinking about like what's next, or having, you talked about emerging technologies and things like that. So talk to us a little bit about how you started to get angles and using things like social media, and you maybe using email or maybe some of the more advanced things that have been going on the past few years. How have you sort of been an early adopter of those, and how have you seen it change the way you do business?
So the early adoption originally took place with, again, talking to the customer, which was mind-blowing, using influencers, which at the time were considered D-list celebrities. We would have these fashion shows and the editors couldn't sit in front of them or see them or be near them because they were these lowly people. And then as new things came out, most of the credit here goes to my brother. He was in technology prior to working with me. And so in the way that I could tell you that red's going to be this color's summer, the color of the summer, he knew stuff that was coming. So from our store of the future to the screens and the dressing rooms, he really had a great sense of that. And some of the timings of the stuff was uncanny, like our store and, we did self-checkout the same day that Amazon launched it. We did wearables the same day that Apple launched theirs. So we kept hitting these moments where we didn't know that was happening, but man, it was great timing. We could be the other person people were talking about. And I was a great student. I would watch him, and, I really began to think about Web3 when I was, weirdly enough, doing an interview for my book, and the interviewer said, why aren't you doing this yet? And I was like, oh man, we're too late, which was 2021.
Wow. Not
really that too late. So the next collection I did, we had a Web3 component. So you could buy the goods on OpenSea, Phygital, the real good, the fake good. Then the next time we came back, we did just fantasy NFTs, and we're experimenting. We're seeing what works. There's no surefire, like, this is the thing that's going to transform the company.
Yeah.
You obviously only read about the people that were like, I did an NFT and made $2 million in 90 minutes, like a friend of mine did. And I'm like, well, that didn't happen to us, but we did good. We sold out in 9 minutes.
Yeah, there you go.
And so my next experiment actually is coming out in 2 months, and it might be the last. I'm not going to lie to you.
Wow.
Just because things are changing so quickly, and you need a team of people that's going to be all in here if you want to be successful. Not in the beginning, but if you're going to keep, I can only throw so much to my team and say, guys, stop doing the things that make us all the money and focus on some digital assets. So we like to play. We like to be first. It has benefited the company greatly. And I think a lot of bigger companies are scared, right? They want to wait till they see everyone else kind of fail and succeed and then pick a direction. We like to be in the iteration phase.
So I think that's a testament to like some of the risk taking, it was interesting a couple minutes ago, you're sitting here saying, you're like, well, what else would I do? And it's like, there's probably some really logical person out there, like there's like 600 things you could go to you. You're like, what else am I going to do? But there's this moving forward thing that you have that is, I'd say really, really interesting. And what does that do to the people around you? You know what I mean? The people you're closest to in the business. Do they feel like it's gyrating, or are they just like, just follow her, just do whatever you know what I mean? Like what is it like for the people around you?
Some of them love it and some of them hate it. So my design team loves it, but they're also like, I can't take on anything more, please, you know?
Uh-huh.
Even though this was really cool and they were so proud of the results. You know, a woman on my team who heads up all my partnerships and PR is like, I'll do this with you, but you didn't hire me for this. And then she'll be texting me on call. She's like, I don't even know what I'm talking about right now, but she'll be saying all the right things. And I'm like, you got it. You know exactly what you're doing.
Going.
So I said, you know, you get to learn something new. Like, it's fun to take on a challenge. That's why I loved writing a book, is I didn't know anything about writing a book or starting a podcast. You know, you can only pick the same leather and make a bag so many hundred times. So to be able to venture out and do new stuff for me is really exciting.
So you are a chase the spark kind of person.
I am.
Okay. I that resonates with me. I tend to chase the spark and have similar, I have nowhere near the things that, what I'm saying is, maybe I'm saying it like this. The people around me have similar feedback. Let's just say. So, you know, I really feel like there's the people that you work with, and then there's the customers that you sell to that you've been sort of resonating with. When you talk about customer feedback, talk to us about that moment where I think it's Cynthia O'Connor that, like, I'm just saying, I was a good look. I had people help. Let's just say, but so talk to us about that whole story and how you sort of devoured feedback.
Okay. I do want to say that we are in an era, and even as a parent, right, where like your kid gets told something offensive and then you want to be like, I'm going to kill that kid, right? It's really hard for people to take feedback and they take it as an offense. But I knew early on, because I get to say I'm still a millennial, I think we were the last generation where you could receive bad feedback and not like shrivel up.
This is the thing.
And be a little wilting flower. So she said, do you want to be in this business? This is what's wrong with your bag. This was the first bag. It was the showroom. She was like the rainmaker for handbag designers.
Yeah.
And all the brands she had were doing between 50 and 50 million. So I wanted to be in that category. And she was like, your hardware is brass tarnishes, the customer won't like that. I thought that was a beautiful aspect to it. Like, I loved that it aged. And then, you know, this hardware is cheap and this is going to fall off and this leather, and like, you've got to imagine that you're picking a leather that has to go on a boat, sustain, you know, hot and cold, and still look beautiful and then last. And so she said, you know, when you figure out the changes you need to make to improve it, let me know. And she honestly didn't think I was coming back. And I spent a week, you know.
Did she know?
Little did she know. I was like, oh, I'll take your feedback.
Yeah.
Try being a dancer and being told all kinds of horrible things and having to still show up. Mm-hmm. So I showed up a week later. She's like, I didn't think you'd come back. And I was like, here's the fixed bag. She goes, much better. Still need some work, but I'll take you on. Not because the bag is perfect, because I see that you're willing to hear the feedback and you're willing to do something about it. And I think if someone can get good at, this person's trying to help me with the feedback that I don't want to hear, or they're trying to hurt me, and becoming an expert in when they're just being just mean, or if they're like, I really genuinely want you to succeed, and here's the 10 things that are why you're not.
So you have to have a mindset to be able to think like that. Like, it's one of those things, like, if you're encountering critical feedback and you're trying to decide which bucket it goes in, right? And it could go in both buckets, right? They could be trying to tear you down a little bit and be a little serious at the same time. You have to really think about what you're thinking about and not be sort of triggered and offended, right? Yes. So what are some of the things that have helped you sit there and receive that? Is it in the moment that you can sort of not get triggered? Is it sort of, and maybe you're hearing it in the moment and you can discern whether it's, you know, critical to tear down or critical to construct? Or is it like after the fact where you just sit there and receive and then you process it all? How do you sort of know which bucket it goes on, or what's your process that you go through?
I think it can be both. I think if you can get good at reading people, if someone's like, I really want to help you, you're like, what's about to come out of their mouth is total garbage, right? Or if someone's like, you're a mess. Can I swear on this podcast?
Yes.
Okay. You are fucking up royally, and here are the things you need to do. Like, at least they're angry and they're providing solutions, but there's not this like evil sort of mean intention.
Yeah.
Or covertly hostile intention that I think if you can get good at reading people, you'll pick up on.
Okay.
So if you get the like, you know what? Or if you leave that room feeling a little bit smaller, then you go, oh, that's probably all garbage. I'll give you a great example.
Yes, to unpack that.
Okay, third baby. I was overworked. I was trying to find the next hit. It wasn't resonating with the customer. And I was like, maybe I don't have it anymore, you know? And I'm going to go out on this leave and I'm going to really disconnect and put in someone who lives and breathes design all day, because it's getting harder to live and breathe design and be the face and do the social and
Be a mom.
and be a mom and travel for work and be the best at being a designer. Here she is, 60 hours a week, just that's all she cares about. So I said, here are the keys. I'm out for 3 months. I don't want to hear it. And we hired this brilliant, well, I thought she was brilliant at the time, CMO. And she, in her meeting, killed it. And red flag number one was immediately she went to kill off my PR person. And then she went to kill off our relationships and working with bloggers. And then when I get back, her first words to me on my first day back, which is for a mom coming back, if you are one, it's like you're going through a little bit of an identity crisis. You haven't slept. You're like, can I do this? And she's like, it would be easier for me if you did not exist. I was like, this is great. This is going to be a great time.
So you went from a great interview to that.
I was like, well, I am here. And so everything she's going to do is going to be to remove, you know, her job would be easier if I didn't exist. She could just go have a blank slate to create a brand that just was whatever it could be, right?
Too bad the company name is...
That's where she struggled, right? So I began to see that anything she would do would probably not be great. And it took a while and a lot of butting heads, and eventually it didn't work out for her. But I think that when you can get good at, I wasn't quick enough to read her. And that's when I said, I will never let this happen again. But now I'm really good. And I'm like, all right, danger, red alert, red alert. This person is just here to hurt you, harm you, make you smaller. And you got to get them out.
Not all heads of marketing are like that.
Phew.
Anyway.
But you know what?
Lots of
At the
them.
same time, she had brilliant ideas. So that's where sometimes you go, this person is evil, but so smart. And sometimes you have to, you know, like my brother, I was pursuing something in the NFT world based on an article he sent me. And he's like, you know who sent me that article? And I was like,
No way.
her? I don't want to do anything that's related to her. So you have to sometimes know, like, there's good and bad mixed.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole deal. To be able to receive something like that, that's good from somebody that you experienced as not good, right? That takes a lot of, that's humility in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, you know, when she completely sort of did remove me from the process and I was like twiddling my thumbs for a couple weeks, that's when I started the podcast. That's when I launched Female Founder Collective. So I go, oh God, her doing that created these two magical things. So it's weird. It can be a mind fuck sometimes.
So did you kind of discover that, like, there was a key thing that you said just a couple of minutes ago where you were like, I need a sabbatical, basically. And you were like, I don't know if I have it anymore. And then you had this whole moment. Where did you land there? And where did you start creating? It sounds like you started creating elsewhere to really find that again. So talk to us about how you found, you know, the thing again. And did you discover that you don't have it anymore with fashion?
So when I didn't have anything to do for a couple weeks and she was like, don't worry, we're going to give you something to do. You know, I was like waiting and I was like, I'm not that type of person that can just sit and do nothing, you know, or be a lady who lunches. So that's immediately when I was like, I have so many incredible women that I know, so many great relationships. How could I tell their stories? That was the podcast. And then for Female Founder Collective, I was like, we don't have that group that we go golfing with. You know, who do I share my struggles with? Yes, I have my brother, but like it's a little different for a woman. And so went on to create that. But that brought an added dimension to the company that became really valuable, not just for the company, but the customers. And I didn't lose my design. I just had to also admit that when you are doing something and you are a professional at it, some jobs take longer or more depth, and you can't do it all. You can't be on the road, X amount of time, and be the best designer and be the best content creator. And, you sort of have to pick. And I think after 18 years of selecting the very fibers of this jumpsuit or whatever, I was like, I don't need to do. It's okay if you chose cotton. I'm good with that. I can still be out there and feel like I had a hand in it, but it's also okay that you did great too. And so it's a little bit of passing of the baton, but doesn't mean I'm not in design, doesn't mean I don't design anything. My whole spring collection was inspired by a trip I took to Mexico. So I think that it just changes.
So what role are you, maybe what roles did you play at the company? What are the major roles that you've played over time, and where are you at now?
So in the beginning, it was just design. Then it was PR, marketing, social media. Then it was, well, how are we going to have a fashion show? We don't have the money to pay for that. I guess I'll go raise some money, and so, people would sponsor the show. So now primarily my role is, in no order, right?
Yeah.
Like people think of me as the founder. I'm obviously front and center on the social media. That does take time to do.
Yeah.
Design. But again, I'm not in every meeting every day anymore. I have my meetings with my team. They present. I yay, nay. They go on.
Okay.
I'll bring in a jacket. I'll be like, entire collection based on this jacket. They'll be like, you're so annoying, but okay. And then really these events and activations that we've been doing, whether we showed up in Aspen last year for President's Day weekend and this big activation and a dinner series, and it's fun. It's fun again. I'm learning something new, and so.
Yeah. So there's a next generation, right, that is kind of coming up through the ranks in the company you're a founder of.
Yep. And
you were that person, at one point. And you talked about millennials being the last generation that can take feedback. And I wonder what are some of the things that you're either observing or doing to kind of bring this next generation up in a way that you feel like could be leveled up to where like their floors your ceiling. You know what I mean? Like, what are the things you're doing to develop people and develop maybe the next generation, whether in the business or around the business?
I would say that the people that I work closest to, again, want the instant gratification immediately. Mm-hmm. A woman that works with me that's 30, she's like, I thought I was going to be a millionaire by 30. I was like, well, at 30, I was making $45,000 a year. She's like, that's not how it is now. And I was like, okay, well, I'm happy to help you figure that out. Let's game this out. How are we going to get you there? You won't be 30, but maybe you'll be 40. I don't know. And so I think it's making sure that this younger generation has these time horizon expectations. Like you can get your coffee, you can get your Uber Eats, your Instacart, all that can be instant. But like this career stuff, I don't know of a quick way to do it. I just don't. That's not how I built my career. I'm sure it's not how you built yours. And so like it is a 10-year, 15, 20-year journey. And you can hop from company to company and you'll see your biggest raises and bonuses that way. Mm-hmm. But do you want to start over every couple of years and do that? Like, why don't you make this a home and figure out how you can build longevity? Or if it is your business, 10 years from now, tell me that you haven't been able to create a brand. Don't come into me in one. Yeah,
because it's not going to have anywhere near a legacy or anything. It's not going to have any power or authority, I guess is probably the right thing to do, because 10 years is a lot, and consistency is a lot over those 10 years.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that I hear as a theme often is the persistence over time and the consistent behaviors that you have to do over time are the things that are going to make you really successful. And it's been a testament. And I think it was really interesting that, people say that you're so lucky, right? But just how intentional it is and how persistent you had to be over time it took you 10 years to be an overnight success.
Correct.
Right.
And I think that people hit that lowest low and they're like, oh man, I don't ever want to experience this again. But I think you'll see that your career, hopefully, if it's going in the right direction, it might not look like this, but it's a slow, if you chart a line, it's going up. It might be very slightly, but as long as it's going in that direction, you're going in the right direction. And you have to, the highs are only good because it was so low.